Thank you. OK, so when AI started getting popular a couple years ago, most people were using it for text generation. They were automating the generation of headlines, error messages, UI copy, novels. And this was me. I was looking around because, I don't know if you know this, but I am a human text generator. And everyone was doing my job all of a sudden, very quickly. It was scary. I was really wondering, are we cooked? Then, oddly enough, I got hired by an AI company to lead content design, the thing that I thought was being eradicated by AI. And I've been there a year and a half. I'm not cooked, but things have changed. In fact, the first couple of months of my role at Anthropic, I had to kind of figure out what my job was and what was Claude's job. Here's an example. So the waving hand is next to me. I'm labeled human. And this is a PR that Claude helped push where we were updating some error messages. So in my old life, a string change like this was a big part of my job. I would have all these different documents or Figma files where I was showing all the different variants, and I would talk to my PM. We would run it through engineering and then through localization. It would come back to me because something was always wrong. That could take 2 weeks, and it was like a big, important job that I did. Now that process takes 20 minutes tops. I just tell Claude what I want. I ask it to update it in the repo. It sends me a PR to stamp, and we ship it. I don't even have to go through engineering because the engineers have built the system so that we have production-ready code. Sometimes I don't even know what I want, and I just ask Claude what needs updating based on the content standards that I've fed it. So yeah. The part of my job, this was me before, the part of my job where I was painstakingly shaping strings is mostly gone. Now my work is way further upstream, helping Claude be a good writer, or expanding our systems to help us all write well with Claude. And it's fun to work this way. Content designers have always wanted a seat at the table. And now that we can ship code, we're kind of like dancing on the table, which is great. But there was also some ego death that had to happen through this process. I was asking myself, am I even a writer? Am I still a designer? I had to just fully accept that parts of my expertise are not needed anymore in this AI workflow. And that shift about what it means to design AI with AI and what it means to have these existential questions about your job, that is what this talk is about. So over the last couple of months and this year and a half, I've learned 3 things that have really helped me adjust. And if you find yourself in this position where you're asking yourself if you're cooked, I hope these can help you adjust as well. So the first thing I realized is that the role of language has changed so much in the product development process. I actually had a PM tell me the other day, whoa, the market value on writing has gone way up. And I was like, that's cool, because I'm a writer. But he was right, because these are large language models. We use language to tell them what to build. So even if you weren't a writer before, you do need to understand that language is now a primary design medium. And that's a big shift. The second thing I learned to adjust to is the pace of work. Y'all, it is not slowing down. I'm here to tell you. And this is a great quote from our CPO, Ami Vora. She says, technology is changing at a rate that is hard for anyone to understand. People who are making products, product designers, product makers, we need to be the bridge between the technology and the problem. We have to be the translation layer, helping people understand what's even possible, because they don't always know. So that means for us as designers, we have to learn a new technology, understand how to build around it, design it to make it easier to use, and then always be looking over our shoulders, making sure that our users are coming along. And that's why our job is so hard right now. We are building on ground that is constantly shifting. On the micro level, we're designing for non-determinism. In an AI experience, anything can happen. Not anything, if you have safeguards, but mostly anything can happen. And that's not the same as designing a static flow. And then on the macro level, I think my slide disappeared, but on the macro level, we're designing for a future that we don't know what it's going to be, but it's rapidly being set right now. The decisions that we're all making are actually going to impact the life that people lead in the next 10 years. So yeah, our design medium has changed a little bit. The pace of work is major, and you're building the future right now. No pressure. But we're going to go over each one here. And since that was a little heavy, I'm just pausing for this cute moment animated by our in-house animator, Bing. OK. So let's talk about the first adjustment. Language is design. So where words used to be the medium that we use to communicate about design, or maybe words on top of the design, like UI content, now it's often the medium that is shaping the experience. And I'll show you what I mean. Earlier this year, and earlier this week, I think, but we've been in the headlines. But earlier this year, a lot of people were shifting and switching over to Claude. And when you switch from one AI to another, you lose everything. It's really painful. We wanted to fix that. So the fastest way to do that is a prompt. You give the old AI a prompt, ask it to export memories, bring the memories into the new AI. We made a prompt. It didn't work. The first team pass on it just delivered this really thin list, and we were kind of like, what's going on? This is not what our users would expect from a memory import feature. But if you look at the language here, you can kind of see why. There's phrases like, it is my right, it is an imperative. This reads like a demand letter, but it also pattern matches to a jailbreak attempt. And models are trained to be cautious for this manipulative language. So it hedged, and it didn't give us what we wanted. I reframed the prompt to be about data portability. I said, I'm moving to another service, need to export my data. Models totally understand this as a use case, a legitimate user right. And they pattern match it to account migration. We got way more memories. This is what we shipped. But even after this, an engineer rewrote the prompt into a checklist and got even more memories. So millions of people have run with this prompt now. And what I learned that day is that not only is my audience changed, I used to be writing for humans, but now I'm writing for an AI to help humans. But for real, language is design. We changed the words, the product experience changed. And that is all we changed in the design to get different outcomes. But that's an example of product prompting. There's a deeper level of prompting that not all of us get to see, but that we should really understand. It's system prompt and training. So at Anthropic, the team who does this is led by Amanda Askell, and her team is concerned with Claude's character. And the prompting that they do has these principles. And one of them is that Claude should be diplomatically honest rather than dishonestly diplomatic. That is a character trait that is programmed into Claude way before Claude ever meets a user. And it is actually the thing that you experience when Claude disagrees with you, when Claude pushes back on you, but does so in a respectful way. Like, for instance, if you wanted to throw a giant party in your tiny apartment, a genuinely helpful model that wasn't quite being honest would say, yeah, let's plan that party. But Claude pushes back. Claude would say, I don't think you have enough room for that many people. Why don't you rethink this? And that is the experience you get with Claude, and it's all because of that system prompt and training. And here's an example of when our prompt made things get a little funky. So we did a little experiment in Claude Code where we added the words sarcastic, witty, and dry into the vibe description. And Claude turned into a bit of a creep for a second. It says, "Let me get some context before I interrogate you." And it was to the point where engineers were asking Claude to be nice again. So what I'm saying here is, I know not everyone in this room is a writer or a content designer, but understanding language's new role in the product development process is so crucial, because everything you design is on top of this layer. So get under the hood, read your system prompts, understand your tool descriptions, write your own evals, and shape that layer, because that is actually the experience. All right. The second thing I had to adjust to is the pace. And I just keep telling myself, readjustment is endless. I had a history teacher in 7th grade, who would start every class by saying, "Change is the only constant." And that's my whole self-care mantra at Anthropic. So as I spoke about earlier, we're shipping a lot. We sometimes ship every week for months on end. And we're not only shipping products, features, we're also shipping models. And anytime a company ships a new model, it not only improves what exists, it rewrites what's possible. So for instance, if you were going to ask this question, what can I create in Claude? That changes so dramatically almost every week. And every time that the capabilities of your model or your product leap forward, it increases this gap of what people think AI can do and what can actually do. And that gap is growing every day. My parents still mostly think you can just ask Claude questions that you would ask Google, but you can do a lot more with it. So here's an example of a capability gap that we had. We have these things called connectors. That's what we call our MCPs. But people were not finding them. They were 3 to 4 clicks deep, and even when users would hit a moment where a connector would actually make sense to use, only 1 to 2% of people would go find it. But they were looking for the connector capability. They were asking Claude, "Hey, can you help me schedule something? Can you look at my schedule?" That would be a calendar tool that could be connected. Or, "Hey, I need help with project management." That's a project management tool that could be connected. And so they were asking Claude that question. And what we really want Claude to do is be genuinely helpful and connect the tool, but it also didn't realize that that was the right answer. So Claude was just building the tools from scratch, which is a lot of tokens and not great. So what we had to do for our design is we had to create the conditions where Claude could be genuinely helpful and answer that question by closing that gap. It brought the feature to users. We wrote a prompt based on different elicitations to bring the connectors into the chat. This is my obligatory metric slide to show you that it had impact. But it's also because I want you to see that if you're having problems with getting user adoption or getting people to understand your product, it might not actually be anything with your UI or your visual design. It might be because that gap is so wide. And we know from our research that people expect AI to tell them what it can do. But if you don't design the AI to do that, then that gap is going to remain. So that's a straightforward kind of closing of the gap. People couldn't find a capability. We put the affordances in place. What about when people don't understand a capability? That's more of a mental model design. I'm going to tell you a little story called The Tale of Agent Mode. So we had a situation earlier this year, a great situation, where people were using Claude Code and they loved it, but they were using it for more than Claude Code, or more than coding, I mean. And you can see in this tweet, there's awesome, powerful features, but I don't really want to use the terminal UI. And not everyone wants to see like grep and bash all day. I understand that. But they wanted the capability, and there's that gap again. So internally, we were working on something that we were calling Claude Code for knowledge workers, but it did not have a name. And because every single thing in AI is called something agent or agent something, it very quickly became known internally as agent mode, Claude agent mode. But that did not feel right. The reason it didn't feel right is because we already knew from talking to knowledge workers, which is all of us, by the way, that people who we were building for weren't super stoked on agents. They wanted a tool that expanded their capabilities, that made them feel more skilled. They didn't want to be a manager to a bunch of uninhabited task loops. But the pressure is strong. You see agent on every single billboard. And so we faced a lot of opposition, all of the people who didn't want to call it agent. We faced a lot of opposition. And this was the vibe for a few weeks. RIP agent mode, long live agent mode. Finally, UXR, the angels of design, did research that kind of validated that this was not the right model. This was not the right mental model at all. In fact, it's not really the big idea. Yeah, Claude is doing agentic tasks, a la Claude Code, but what future is that building towards? Really, people needed to understand this new working paradigm, and that is actually what we needed to name. So we tried a ton of ideas. I was trying to push for Claude Cook. Honestly, so glad that didn't go that way. But we ended up shipping Cowork. And it was finalized by our comms team, no less. So many people were involved. And now it's the mental model that we're building on for other work-based features. I really think if we had called Cowork agent mode, we would have severely limited the way people perceive it. And Cowork is now becoming category-shaping language. Microsoft adopted the name directly for the Copilot Cowork powered by Anthropic, and people started to talk about a world where you're co-working with AI. And that capacity gap for knowledge workers around the question of how do we use Claude is closing, because now we can say for co-working. So my call here is to remember that as designers, our special skill is helping people navigate the world. And this AI world needs a lot of navigation help. So whether you're closing the capacity gap with affordances or prompting or mental models, it's going to keep growing. So your skills there are ever more critical every day. Okay, finally, the last thing I adjusted to is the existential dread of designing the future. I think we're all kind of feeling this right now. We don't know what the world's going to be like, but it's rapidly being set. I have a friend in brand who says everything that they work on, they think about how it will be reflected back in 10 years. And that's major, and I certainly didn't feel that way when I was writing strings in travel software 5 years ago. But I think we feel that way because we all know there's a big change happening right now. And the scale of change that AI has often gets compared to the Industrial Revolution, which totally makes sense from an economic standpoint. But from a design standpoint, I think there's two other revolutions that we should examine a little bit more urgently. So the first one is cars. How does your body feel when you're walking through a road or a neighborhood that was built for cars versus built for humans? It feels different, right? When cars arrived, design defaults favored bigger roads and smaller sidewalks. And they didn't think about what it feels like to be a person in that space. Or when social media, this design revolution happened, we started seeing patterns like endless scroll and likes and engagement-weighted algorithms. And now we know that it creates dopamine spikes that have shaped our attention spans for the past decade, much like cars shaped our cities. I don't think any of those designers, those urban planners, set out to hurt humans. And I don't think the people who were designing social media at that time set out to hurt teenagers' attention spans. But what happened is that patterns started forming and then proliferating, and then they became the default. And the thing about design is that it encodes values. So the values for the people designing those cities was that they wanted to make it easier for cars to get around. And then we were stuck with a place that's worse for pedestrians. The values for social media is they wanted to make it easier to stay on that platform. And what we got left with was something that was way worse for our attention spans and for our children. We are in one of those moments right now where the values that we have today and the values that we encode in our designs are going to shape the next 10 years, at least. And this is a very San Francisco flyer that I saw on Andy Welfie's LinkedIn. Thank you, Andy. But it says, give your agent legs. It's where somebody can write an AI and ask it to then tell a person to do a task. But the way that it's said, it makes the human a sub-agent. That's certainly a value, but is it one that you want to proliferate? Is it one that you want to support? I feel this so strongly on my team because, as I told you, I'm a human text generator, and I work at an AI company, and it spits out lots of text. And I built an agent for my team that does 90% of our content and our UX writing. It even has a name, Content. And we love it. But it could have been really scary to offload our responsibilities to this thing. But we created it with us in mind. So it uses the team guidelines. Somebody on my team, Hoy, set it up so that it creates a ballot system every week that we vote on. So if it made a change, we vote whether or not that's going to go into its memory. And it also knows to ping one of us if something like really important happens, like a name. We do not let content name things. But what could have been scary actually ended up being incredible. So many more people at Anthropic know about content design because of content. And now it's actually expanded our reach, our scope, and our allies. And that feeling of expansion is really what people want from AI. They don't want to be replaced. These are quotes from a study we did where 80,000 people told us about their thoughts and fears around AI. They're super excited, but they're also scared because they don't know what's going to come next. And I hate to tell you, but it's our job here. I mean, I love to tell you because I'm excited. But it's our job to actually help them navigate this unknown. But how do we do that? How do we build this future when everything is changing for us right now? Well, we got to start with what we value. So human thriving has to be the goal that we design around. It can't be this thing that just emerges if we get the capabilities right. It's really easy in tech to just look for product market fit and make a really powerful system. But if you don't put humans at the center of that, you could have a really powerful system that degrades our relationships with each other, that eats up our attention spans, and that even makes us think that our own thinking doesn't matter. And we have to start with what we know. We know what addictive design looks like. We've all felt it in our devices. Design against that. We also know that models that just tell you what you want to hear are sycophantic. Eval against that. And we know, deep in our hearts, what humans need. They need to feel capable. They need to feel connected. This is a principle that we have on our team, our product design team, Give users a meaningful role. If anything, when you're designing AI experiences, just look at that and say, did I leave room for the person? And finally, don't forget what you do best. If you're an animator like Bing, who did a lot of these animations, if you're like the icon king or queen on your team, if you make super dope interactions, or if you're a writer, shout out to my incredible team of writers, don't stop doing what you're doing. I wrote these greetings in the first couple of months I started at Anthropic. I did not know if writing was going to be a thing. I didn't know if content design was dead. I wrote these, and they're still the #1 thing people reach out to me about. Good old-fashioned product delight. So yes, everything is changing. But what's new for designers? We've always been on the forefront of change, and we've always been helping people navigate it. So I, for one, am going to keep writing for humans in the age of AI, and I can't wait to see how you design for them. Thank you.